On the first day of Summer Games Fest last week, out of nowhere, we got the official release date for the Lies of P DLC, which came out immediately after announcing its release date, so completely out of the blue, they decided to just drop it. And man, do I tell ya, it's probably the greatest thing that has dropped this year so far. Take this with a grain of salt, since I am an absolute Lies of P enthusiast. I just love everything about it. So I'm very biased when it comes to this game, but still, it's safe to say that Lies of P Overture is a big fat W. Which is why today I want to talk about my first experience with the DLC and whether it lives up to the base game's quality overall. Before we start though, I gotta mention that there will be small spoilers during the part where I talk about the story, so if you don't want to know anything about what the game is about, or at least what the early parts are about yet, then feel free to skip that part, since I will briefly mention how the story begins so you can get a glance on what the DLC is even about. Which is exactly what we're gonna start with, so let's take a peek at Overture's story and its general theme. Lies of P Overture takes Pinocchio to the past of Krat, way before the puppet frenzy even was a thing, and into the timeline of the legendary stalker Leah. After completing Chapter 9 in the main story, we go to visit the Stargazer from Chapter 5, at the graveyard that before the DLC was completely useless. Now, however, we can interact with it and soon notice something appearing in our inventory. It's a crystal that teleports us back in time into a Krat that is quite a bit snowier than the one we all know and also quite a bit younger. Soon, we find the stalker Leah, who is in search of her student Romeo, the same one we know from the base game and we fought in shape of the Puppet King. Gemini, only very briefly, remembers once working at her side, but can't quite remember all the details. However, he still wants to help her find Romeo together with us. And thus the DLC's first main objective is introduced, and we start looking for him. On our path, we visit a variety of different places, of which probably the most important one is the Monad Charity House, which is the place in which both Romeo and Carlo grew up in. We get a ton of background information about Carlo's, Romeo's, and Leah's past and are able to fill in many blanks throughout the course of the game's story, full of surprises, loss, vengeance, big twists, and a depressing ending. And also, finally get to see Pinocchio show legitimate emotions, diving even deeper into his inner conflict between being stuck somewhere in between puppet and human. Overall, story-wise, this, in my opinion, is an almost perfect prequel. Adding the missing pieces of story, introducing new characters with interesting own stories, and continuing the tone of the game to the best of their abilities. If anything, the story just made me wish we could get even more. Talking about the gameplay and new content the DLC offers, we got just as much to talk about. By introducing new quests, weapons, amulets, enemies, bosses, and areas, Lies of P Overture feels just like, well, more Lies of P, which is exactly what a DLC should be. In total, we got 4 new chapters, each having fun areas to play in and even more fun bosses to fight. Areas that stuck in mind the most for me were the Krat Zoo, in which we fight mutated or corrupted animals, as well as a specific place where you walk over like ice flows and enemies and cannonballs try to knock you off the ice, making you fall to your immediate death. However, just as in the base game, the areas are rather easy compared to the bosses, and definitely cannot live up to the challenge the bosses provide. It's just extremely well boss design if you go through a great area and then when facing the boss realize, man, the area was totally boring compared to this. They make it again where it feels super rewarding to have finished an area and thus finally being able to face a new, visually and design-wise unique, creative and original boss that also, thanks to the great combat system, is super fun to fight. But don't get me wrong, the fun is still connected to a lot of work because the bosses might just be even harder than those of the base game, if you ask me. Which on one hand provides a new, even greater challenge, and on the other hand makes finishing the game feel even more rewarding. However, if you're not up for that big of a challenge, don't you worry. Because with their latest update, we not only got boss rush and colorblind mode, but also a difficulty slider allowing you to switch between Butterfly's Guidance, effectively being the equivalent of easy mode and allowing you to enjoy the story of the game, all the way to Legendary Stalker difficulty, which is the base game's difficulty. I personally think that this deserves a plus point as well, because in my opinion, it's always better to add difficulties through weakening the originally intended boss by lessening their moveset or making the attack slower, rather than just smacking more health and damage on an already existing boss to make them harder. The only con that is kind of mentionable, I guess, would be that the general playstyle of the game does not change. If you expect something more outstanding than just more Lies of P, then the DLC is probably not for you. But overall, I would consider this DLC as absolute peak content that one can argue even surpasses the base game in terms of difficulty, story, and offers many new build options, adding to the game's play variety. I absolutely love the DLC, and I'm still having a super great, outstanding time with it, but I'm also excited to hear what you guys think and what your opinion on it is, so make sure to share your thoughts in the comment section or show me some support by giving the video a like or subscribing to the channel. I wish everyone a great rest of your day and hope you enjoyed the video. Bye bye.